Aloha and welcome to Author Talk. I'm Lori, coming at you from the beautiful Big Island of Hawaii, and I'm so excited about my author today, Jordan P. Barnes. His book is One Hit Away, a memoir of recovery, and also he is the winner of the Indies Today Book Award for 2020. So he's got an award for the best book of the year. So that should tell you right there. His book is beautifully written. His story is amazing. It's profound, and it is his memoir of recovery from addiction. But I really feel like it's got something for everybody in there. So welcome, Jordan.
Aloha. Good afternoon. Happy Aloha Sunday. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here and joining me today. So you didn't ease us in to your story at all with chapter one. So
No.
yeah, my chin hit the floor and then pretty much stayed there the whole book. So just give us a little bit of kind of contrast. I know you were or context. You're living in Portland, living on
Mhm.
the streets in Portland. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm from here. I'm from Hawaii. I grew up on Oahu and I went to Portland for college in 2003. Now, my entire young adult life, I struggled with addiction in some sort. It was mainly alcoholism. When I was a teenager, I started experimenting with drugs. And when I went to Portland, like they say, I took myself with me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Portland, my drinking had escalated continuously. And it was just like they say, it was getting worse, never better. And long story short, I had a fateful night. I basically made a decision. Someone offered me what I believed to be a way out from drinking, and it was heroin, and it went downhill rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunately my story is similar to a lot of people who fall into that trap. They maybe have no idea what to expect when it hits them and they get blindsided. And I just also have an addictive personality. So within short order, homeless, strung out on the streets, stopped talking to my family. I had no self confidence. I had no self respect. I didn't know where I was going. I was just running amok. And that life doesn't mess around.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take any prisoners. You basically are very fortunate if you can make it out. I'm really fortunate because I know that I have a loving family that never gave up on me, even after I had long given up after on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I also am fortunate that there's so many healthcare professionals and harm reduction providers that were there to allow people like me experiencing such severe and traumatic addiction to potentially leave that one day with minimal health effects and lasting ramifications. And that's it. So I'm really fortunate. I'm really fortunate that I found a place like Sand Island Treatment Center, which is my home group. That's where I
Mm-hmm.
got sober. That's where I learned a lot about myself and a lot about the different aspects to making a program of recovery. And a lot of that went into my book. And the reason I made my book was to keep what you have to give it away. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to share that story. And I thought it was really important for parents and loved ones of addicts to read it because
Yes.
honestly that's who this that because this is my story, but it's my family story. It's my
Mm-hmm.
mom, my dad, it's my aunties, my uncles, my mom's best friend in church that prayed for me. Like it's a huge, you know how it is, it's a huge
Yes.
community. Everyone is your family here in Hawaii. And so that was really important to me, was to tell not just my story but the story of those around me, including the healthcare professionals at Sand Island. and
Yes. And
and that was
you did it. You did it so well, and I'm so glad that you brought in kind of your parents' plight and the family, and really all of the support around you, because otherwise you can't make it. I mean, you need that support, and you know, I was just so thrilled that your parents, stuck with you and
yeah,
all of that. So that's a big testament to them because they were in agony. You know.
yeah,
So when
yeah,
you moved to Portland, you had already kind of been an alcoholic or drinking as a teenager. When
yeah.
when the person introduced you to heroin, did you know already that you were like an addict, that you were addicted to alcohol?
For sure.
Okay.
Totally. I mean, I had a DUI at 16, I had a DUI at 17. I was binge drinking for weeks on end. And I
Okay.
was recently hospitalized from uh, effectively violent vomiting that
Mm.
collapsed my lung, and they thought it tore my esophagus. So I was in like a really bad spot. I really was drinking myself to death. I wasn't confused about that. I knew I had an issue. I had tried to get help. I had done AA. I had done counseling.
Hmm.
My dorm had me on probation, and I was on like the last straw. So yeah, it was no bones about it. And it's something I'd struggled with my whole life. And
Yeah.
it's also pretty strong in my family. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely knew I had an issue with drinking.
Okay. So, but in your mind, you thought, oh, I'll take heroin, and then that'll get me to stop drinking. But never even occurred to you that you would then become addicted to heroin. Like that's
Kind of.
just not
So,
the thought process.
well, I thought it was opium. Like it makes a difference, right? Like that's what I was told, but I also was willing to do anything to stop drinking, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like in some regards, like when they say an addict has to be ready for help, I
Yeah.
was ready for help. I was just asking the wrong person for help, right? Like I didn't know what I was walking into, but I also didn't care because I was running away from something.
Yes. Yeah. So, you try heroin, and like you said, it just basically took you down really fast.
Yeah.
And so, now basically after a series of events, you drop out of college, and you're living on the streets
Yeah.
of Portland, like you're a junkie on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we
Yeah.
all, I mean, I think everybody has an addict in their life, whether it's immediate family, friend, extended family. Um, but it's another thing to like be a junkie on the street. I mean, that's not everybody knows that, like the depth of that. And so,
Yeah.
well, let's just start with chapter one. um,
Sure.
so, so it's probably been a while now that you've been on the streets, and you've sunk
Yeah.
real low. And
Mhm.
so but you've got, your addict friends or your street friends around you, and you found a place to sleep near a church, or I think it was a synagogue. It was kind
Yeah.
of in my mind, I pictured a doorway, but I don't think that's what it was. But anyway, somewhere out of the weather. And you wake up, and what happened when you woke up that morning, the next morning, after going to sleep with your friend near the church?
I went to wake up my friend, and I discovered he had died in his sleep. I know that he was previously uh, incarcerated, and he was incarcerated for long enough for his tolerance to drop. And when they let him out, this is a really common issue. This is
Mm-hmm.
actually, in fact, the statistics of your chance of overdosing goes up 70% after 2 days of incarceration because your tolerance drops so low. So my friend came out, and he knew this. He was cognitive of the fact that his tolerance was low, so he was taking it easy. But really, I mean, like Haven says, math is hard. It's hard to judge what you have, how much you have,
Mm.
and what you're doing. And so he had basically done a shot, laid down to sleep next to me. We both fell asleep, and he had passed away in his sleep. And I woke up to discover his body next to me, and it was horrible, as anyone could imagine.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was, you don't think of those things, right?
Yeah.
But it was also like just a few sentences after that when I went, okay, this guy was a legit heroin addict on the street, because your friend is there, deceased, on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
But then what do you do?
Rifled through his pockets for dope. So there's things that I could take to the grave with me, right? There's things that I could just never tell anyone about. No one needs to know. I can just internalize them and keep them to myself. But I had to make a decision. Do I be honest, or do I be brutally honest? And I decided that I really wanted to tell people what I felt was one of my personal lowest lows, because I need people to know that if you're struggling with addiction, because so many other people are at that same low or lower, you can make it out, right? So I wanted people to know that, it's not that I'm a bad person. It's not that I didn't care about my friend, or that I didn't love him, or that I wanted to disrespect him. It's that I had a raging addiction that I had to feed
Yeah.
at all costs. And
Yes.
that was one of the costs, was doing something like that. And I just think that that was really important to share, because I think it says a lot about the fact that we do recover, and that it's okay. It's okay to be open about those things, but what are you going to do with it? It's not okay if you're just doing stuff like this all the time, and you don't use it to change for the better.
Right.
But if you use it as a source of motivation to improve your life, or possibly improve the life of others, then we can make something good of a horrible situation.
Yes, yes, because I thought, okay, that's you know, that's heavy. That was heavy. But then I just, here you've got an award-winning book. And so I thought that was just the contrast that really showed how far you came, how far you can come. It doesn't matter how low, how down you are. You can make it out. And so that's what I loved about that, and appreciated about you putting that scene in there. It's real. It's raw. It
Yeah.
it it happened, and it happens, right? Addictions are not your friend, really.
I also want to add that I did I was so under the weather and using, that I didn't have a chance to process that when it happened, right? So I didn't leave and go cry somewhere. I was numb to emotion. By reaching out to the Portland Police Bureau and requesting the death report, and going in and going back to Beth Israel Synagogue and doing all this research at a later date to go back and process it, was really healing in and of itself, because it gave me closure that I never granted myself back when that happened. I just sort of swept it under the rug, did it with my 4-step, but then I didn't remember a lot of those things, and I just kind of, it was all like I was just trying to get rid of everything, right? I didn't want to process it. So very, very healthy to write about that.
Yes, because it gets it outside of you. Yeah, and then again, it helps. Somebody else. This keeps coming out of my ear, but so another thing that I didn't realize, and is probably common on the street, is you had wrote about, because you carried around a dope kit, and that actually surprised me a little bit, just because of like the thievery, right, and the selfishness, and when somebody needs a hit, you'll rifle through a dead person's pocket, right? And so I was surprised when I read that, even though it may be common. But the other thing that I really couldn't fathom until I read it, was that you actually carried Narcan in your dope kit, and so that's the thing. That's what you use if you overdose, right?
Yeah.
And so, why did you carry that around? I mean,
I have saved, like, I carried it around because it was given to me. So to start, Narcan, naloxone, is distributed from harm reduction services like the syringe exchange. A lot of people think a needle exchange, all they do is give junkies needles, and they use like terminology like that, that's like kind of like puts people down for what they do. But there's so much more that goes on to it. There's overdose awareness, overdose prevention, counseling. I'm starting a whole nother book right now based on a syringe exchange and the efforts that go into harm reduction. But that was given to me, and it's funny. You'll see. I was talking to Haven, who runs that exchange, and she's also in my book, as you know. And she was telling me, you'll see a meme like, why do addicts get needles when diabetics have to pay for their insulin? And the thing is, addicts don't get these needles for free. They're given to us for free, but the syringe exchange pays for them, right? So they pay for them and give them out. And it's the same thing with Narcan, and it's the same thing with naloxone. And I carried it with me because it was given to me. And the more people that have that, or have access to that, the more people can save lives, or have their own life saved with their own. That happens too. And then people can go on, and if they choose to change their life for the better, they can go on and live happy, healthy, productive lives. we're not forever going to be this addict in this horrible spot. So I carried it with me because it was given to me, and I think that I was very fortunate because I've saved people with it, and I've been saved with it, and a lot of people had it too. It wasn't just me that had it. So I think it's a beautiful thing that they're doing that.
That program in Portland sounded like a really great program and
Yeah.
very very effective. You also had I like to just say angels. I think actually I think your parents or maybe your dad specifically referred to somebody as an angel, and I that's why I like to read. When I read people's memoirs, and then as the reader, you can see all the little angels, all the little kind of divine interventions that help you uh, when you're not helping yourself, right? And
Yeah.
so you had you had gone to the police station, or you were going to the jail. I don't remember now exactly why, but you look up and there's a lady trying to get in the door in the wheelchair, and then
Mm-hmm.
this was also when you just the person has an addiction. They're not bad. They still have a heart. They've got a soul. And so I thought this particular scene brought that out in you, and I thought, okay, he's gonna be all right. That's when I thought that. So how did that all go down? The
So
Yeah,
so I was accompanying my friend, the same one who unfortunately passed away. So I opened my book with that scene, but then I went back,
yeah,
and I was going with him, and he was going to collect. He had previously been arrested, and they held on. I think it was cash. I think he had to go and sign out. He had too much cash for them to give him, or that's we were there, and I was outside. He had gone in, and I was sniping cigarettes from the ashtrays, and there was a woman just freaking out trying to get into the door, and I went to help her out. And you're absolutely right. My mom and dad were immediately convinced, and still convinced, she was put there to put me, because right then my dad was there, and they were sent to the wrong place to begin with. So there was so many. It's hard to say that it's hard to say that they're coincidences. Now, I'll admit that I had a hard time believing this and thinking this, and I didn't want to think that there was angels or that God was looking out for me at that time. I was so in myself and in my like worldly woes that it was extremely difficult for me to even accept that there was someone out there looking out for me. But in hindsight, when I look at my life and my story, and these are just some of the things I write about, I've had so many instances where someone was watching out for me, and where I am fortunate to be sitting here today with you to tell my story. And yeah, that was they call it a God shot. There's all sorts of names for it, but that was just good looking out to put me in that spot. And it was fortuitous, because my parents were looking for me in the city with no idea where to start looking, and within short order they found me, and that was it. And that was the beginning of a grueling and arduous process to eventually land myself in treatment.
yeah. That story was just mind blowing because they had just flown in from Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just right there at the same time, it could have only been divine.
Yeah, they
Um,
had no contact with me whatsoever. My mom was talking to the sheriff. She was tracking me by my arrest records, and so she knew I was supposed to be at court the next day, and so she was coming the day early, flying up a day early, just to like figure out where court was so she could be there. Right? So like she was planning to like surprise me.
and
but
it,
but I wasn't going to court. I wasn't going to go to court. I was always released on my own recognizance, and then I would just run and get a bench warrant, and then it would just go on. So like even her plan was never going to happen. I wasn't going to be there. That's the last thing I was going to do, is show up and be incarcerated for anything.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and so everybody had a surprise that day, and so
Yeah.
so mom and dad are relieved that you're alive. Um, so that was good. And then I know they were with you for a couple days. But you still like you said that was the beginning of your process, but you still had to go out and figure out some things. As I say, there's still some things on the street to figure out.
Mhm.
And I definitely, want to talk about Sand Island and the treatment and everything. But there was just a couple other things that, to me, were so
Sure.
mind blowing. Just because I don't know that world. The addicts and stuff I knew were functioning essentially. Um, but so what was a day like? I know you were stealing things. You wrote in your book that like you poked yourself 100 times a day or so. So tell us like basically what a day was like at your life at that time.
Being an addict, being strung out on heroin and homeless is a horrible existence. There's nothing good to say about it. There is nothing that feels good about it. My days, I refer to them, it felt like Groundhog Day. You feel like you're going nowhere. You wake up unmotivated, you hate yourself, you're sick, you're cold, you're wet, you're miserable. You already start your day off on the wrong side of the bed. You don't even have a bed to start on. There's nothing good about it. And it's just chasing something. I read this in a review about my book. Someone's like, Jordan's story is basically chasing something that wants to kill you. And that's exactly, when I heard that, I'm like, that's exactly what it is. It's something that doesn't care about you. And it's miserable. All day you're stealing. I was stealing. People have different hustles. Some people can sell drugs and pay for their habit that way. Some people do other things. I was a booster, so I would just steal and trade and steal and trade. And that anxiety of constantly at risk of being arrested, and then what that means for your addiction, it's really unsettling. And it's terrible. I'm so fortunate to be where I am, and I'm coming up on 10 years clean and sober.
Right
I'm
on.
so blessed that I don't think there's people that they call them dry drunks, and they basically are long-term recovery, and they like hate life. And they miss it. I don't have any of that. I'm so blessed and fortunate that I look back and all of that was just horrible. So there's no romance with the streets. I even wrote, like, you think you can confuse like freedom for not having a job. That's not it. There's no freedom being strung out and addicted to something, because you have no choice. You have to basically, okay, you do have a choice, but it feels like you have no choice,
Right.
is I guess my point. And that's, it's miserable. And you're right. I poked myself. I've always had bad veins, and I was an IV heroin user, and I was also at the end doing speedballs, which is heroin and cocaine. And I don't want to get too graphic, but it was not healthy. And it was basically, I was just destroying myself. And it took a long time to physically and mentally, but mainly physically, recover from that damage. And there's some parts of me that won't recover, and that's also okay. That's just part of my story.
Yeah, yeah, and just you now, even with some ailments that are gonna hang on. You look healthy. You seem healthy. So it's just another testament to how remarkable our bodies are.
Yeah, yeah.
Once you give them what they need. And I like what you said.
And our spirits too.
Oh
'Cause
yeah, yeah,
that's
for
it.
sure.
That's a huge part.
Yeah, and so you finally you've had it. You get to the medical detox. Your parents come again. Just I just love the way that you included your parents in your story. And I could just feel their codependence like early on. But they're showing tough love now. By this point. So kudos to them. But so now you've come back to Hawaii, and you get into Sand Island Treatment Center, which is a 2-year treatment center. So that's a long time. So like, what were your first days like in treatment?
So I didn't know it was 2 years when I showed up. And I don't think my parents knew, and if they did, they didn't tell me. I didn't really know what I was going to. I sort of ran from a lot of issues. So I was fleeing something to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was because of my friend's passing and other felony warrants and stuff. And I was willing to go. And I'm fortunate that I had a medicated detox at Hooper Detox, and that helped. But I also didn't sleep for the first month, and it was really, really difficult. And Sand Island expects, if at all possible, they want you to get a medical detox if you're coming straight off an active addiction before you go into their program. And that's what I did, and it was still really tough. And a lot of people don't make it through the first 30 days. It's actually a blackout period. So they don't want you talking to your family. They don't want you talking to your wife, your husband, your kids, no one that could set you off. They just want you to kind of like calm down, take a deep breath, realize that life is changing for the better, hopefully, right? That's the goal. And that's it. And I I know that there's all sorts of different treatment programs out there, and there's a lot of effective ways to address a habit. I can't imagine a short-term program working for me. One, I've tried it in the past and it didn't work. But two, having not slept for the first 3 days, I wasn't even receptive and awake half the time to listen to people trying to help be impactful in my life. And so it took a long time, and it was really tough. And the longer I stuck it out, the easier it got, and the easier it got. But I had a voucher to fly back because our plane got derailed to Seattle, and so it was like this turmoil, this constant battle. Like, I can leave if I want to, like I don't want to. I can though, and it was.
I was like, don't you dare!
I not only had a voucher, but I had a temporary paper license that was going to expire, and I was like, I can still go back to Portland up until my license expires. After that, I don't have any identification to get onto an airplane, and that's just my thinking. Like, it was sick thinking. But that's okay. That's okay. That's part of the process.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to have gone to a place like Sand Island. I can't say enough good things about them.
Yes, yeah, and you gave him lots of props, which was very nice. And so you go from just the life of a drug addict on the street to a very structured situation.
Yeah.
So what a stark contrast again from daily life, having to live a schedule. But then I don't know if this was early on, but it's at some lecture, and the people that were around you, what you wrote was, I can relate, like you were relating to what they were saying, and they'll understand what you're going through. Kind of like that was the first time maybe ever that you felt like people understood.
Yeah. That's, so for those that don't know, almost everyone that's staff at Sand Island has gone through the program at least once. Not all of, almost all of them. And most of them are addicts in long-term recovery themselves. And so they know what we're going, they have that real empathy that people like me need to hear to understand things are going to be okay. And for me to trust that things can be okay. And I can look at them and be like, well, if they can do it and it's working for them, then there is a chance. It's not easy. It doesn't happen quickly, but the fact that I could relate to them, that was really important. And I still relate to them. And ironically, now the roles have reversed, and I'm the one coming up on 10 years clean and sober, and other clients can look to me, and it's the same thing. And thus a cycle continues, but a healthy cycle. Kind of beautiful if you think about it.
Oh yeah, just really beautiful. And so they, it seemed like another thing was that they kind of kept saying to you, especially in the beginning, was there's no rush. Of course, it's a 2-year deal, but I feel like maybe they weren't really saying that because you have 2 years, but as in this takes time. Like, really trying to tell you, impress upon you, the new people, this just takes time. You can't rush this.
Yeah, you can't. And then, like, the dirty secret that no one wants to tell you when you're new, or that you don't want to hear, is that it's a lifelong process. No one, like, that would just freak you out. You're like, what? Like, the rest of my life? But that's the ultimate goal. That's my ultimate goal, is to die sober. I'm going to do it. I mean, to me, I'm just going to do it. but that they broke it up in chunks to kind of, like they say, day by day. People do minute by whatever. They break it up to make it digestible, and it helps. I mean, it helps because you're right. It's a lot to take in. You're At least I wasn't in the mindset that this was going to be something that was attainable even to begin with, and so for them to kind of help guide me through that was really cool. And for that's why I give them so much credit, is because give credit where credit's due. I owe those people, like so many others, tremendous thanks for showing me the way.
Yeah, and it sounded like there's a lot of writing and a lot of journaling,
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
steps, and so what was I thought there was um, on step 4, when you were going through step 4, that's the inventory, right? Taking your inventory. Yeah. I think what you said was, I never stood a chance, and I think my note was, it was your most significant takeaway. So there was something about step 4 where you realized that you never stood a chance had you not gone into rehab.
Yeah, I still have that paper. I kept everything, and that was part of the writing process, was going through and transcribing. I transcribed every daily 10th step, which is basically journal. I did a video on my YouTube channel about this. Every day they ask you to write, like to kick off your day in silence with a small writing thing, and it was really useful. And then step 4, you go through all of the things, your resentments, everything that you hate about yourself, hate about others, and I had this moment where I just almost like guided, just my hand was just going, and it was just going, and it was going, and I ran out of space, and at the end I just scrawled, I never stood a chance. And that's how I felt. But that's the process for so many. I mean, so many people, I can tell you, a lot of us go through similar experiences working a program. I mean, it works for so many people, and that was just one of those. I'm glad to hear that for you that was a good takeaway. For me, that was just as impactful. It was really an important day in my journey.
So was there like kind of one day or a moment with a lecture, maybe talking to one of the counselors, where like the mindset switch flipped, and you thought, this is going to be hard, I have a lot of work to do, but I am going to be okay. Was there a time when you had like that aha moment?
Yeah, to me, it was a leading process. So over time, I'm just taking in everything around me. I'm watching people doing well. I'm watching guys go on and live their lives, other clients getting their clients. So I like, all these things are coming in. And then I have that scene at the beach where I go with my friends, and I go and I'm just like, I heli into the water and I float on my back. And for the first time, it's the first time being in the ocean in years, but then for the first time to feel like calmness and peacefulness, and think like there is going to be a time in my life where things will calm down, and I can relax, and everything will be okay. And that was it for me. That was the moment. And I still have a very strong spiritual connection to the ocean. My newborn son, his middle name is Kamana, powerful ocean, strong current. It's just water in my life, and being there and in the presence of all that power, that was really impactful. And I'm so fortunate. I tell people Sand Island's not like a vacation. it's a tough program, but I'm so fortunate that we were within walking distance to a beach.
Yes.
And to have that opportunity. And that was it for me. And I think that was really, I think that's when I realized things would be okay.
And that was such a beautiful scene, because I knew you had grown up in Hawaii, so you grew up in the water, in the ocean, essentially, and then moved, and then I just thought, oh man, all those years he wasn't in the ocean, and now he's like back in the. I mean, because the ocean itself is just healing. And you were like home in the ocean. It was really beautiful, really a beautiful scene there. So we're just at kind of 30 minutes right now, but if you have, what's one last kind of takeaway that you would want to people to get from your book?
Um, I think that I think that ultimately this is a story of hope, and that people like me do recover. That's one. The other thing that I think that's really important is I am very aware that I was fortunate to have parents that actually cared
Yeah.
still to come and find me. I know not everybody has that support group. So I understand that there's a privilege there, and I'm very grateful that I have a family that wants me, wanted me to succeed and be happy and healthy. So the takeaway is that I want people to know is that if you love an addict or someone that's struggling with addiction, know if you're close to them, they're going to push you away because you are the biggest threat to their addiction. The people that love you the most are the biggest threat to an addict's using. And if people can move past that and just say, you know what, let's not let them push me away and let the addiction win. And if they can just hold out hope, there's always going to be a chance. I've seen a lot of people recover. I've seen people recover that people thought didn't have a chance, and that's just not true. And so that would be my biggest takeaway is that don't give up, have faith, know that there is good help out there, know that you don't have to have all the answers yourself, that there's wonderful professionals out there that are empathetic and caring, and they can really help your loved one get to a better spot if they're suffering. And that's it. And
Yeah. So
I think that that's the story of my life, and that's the goal. I want people to know that.
yes, well said, well put. It's amazing story. I'm gonna hold it up one more time. One Hit Away. I know it's a little got a glare on it. It's available on Amazon.
Yep.
Again, friends of family of addicts, an addict struggling, trying to stay clean. Jordan's story is powerful. It will give you hope. It really will. And just to not give up. So please go get it. Give it as a gift. It's so beautifully written. And Jordan, you stay there. But thank you everybody
Can
for
I add one more?
watching.
Can I add?
Yes, please do.
I am putting my heart and soul into a recovery YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/one hit away. I'm taking a lot of what I've learned about myself in the program and I'm digesting it into content that's relatable to those in recovery. So if you're interested in learning more about my journey and where I'm continuing to go, I would love for you to take a look at that. It'd mean a lot to
Yes.
me. And thank you for the
Yes.
opportunity. Thank you, Mahalo, for letting me share and for inviting me on. It's fortunate. Thank you.
Yes, of course, and I will put that link out,
Thank you.
with the video and stuff. So don't go away, but I'm
Yeah.
going to thank you again. Aloha, everybody.